So everyone knows about the American Revolutionary War, right? I mean, George Washington, the Declaration of Independence, and Valley Forge. But there was a conflict known as the 7 Years' War. It took place 22 years before the start of the Revolutionary War. And this conflict deserves a lot of attention, too, because it has some pretty huge impacts on the development of the United States. So before we unpack the historical stuff, I like to tell my students to envision a swing set. It's a nice, warm July day. Your neighbors put up this swing set. You look at this swing set and you think it's pretty cool. These kids are having fun. But you don't want to play with these kids on the swing set. No, you want this swing set by yourself. This is the face that you make when you look at those kids because, like, oh, they're having fun. I want this swing set for myself. So what are you going to do? Okay, well, first, you can't take it over by yourself. You're not strong enough. So what do? You're going to talk to these three kids here. And you're going to say, hey, I want you guys to help me take over this swing set. And they're like, well, why should we help you? And you're going to say, well, wouldn't it be cooler if these three kids weren't there? And they're like, yeah, that would be kind of cool. We'd have more space to, go down the slide and hang out on this swing. So, yeah, that would be cool, but we're not quite sure. And he's like, well, hey, I'll give you some candy. And they're like, okay, we're going to help you take over the swing set, right? So you've got this kid, this kid, this kid, and this kid. They're getting ready to fight against these three kids with squirt guns and water balloons, of course, but there's a problem. There's another kid. We're going to call him Super Soaker Kid. And he's literally doing the exact same thing that you're doing. He wants the swing set for himself. So he's going to talk to these three kids. He makes an alliance. And before you know it, the stage is set for an epic July clash over the swing set. That's the metaphor for the 7 Years' War, right? What does all this mean? Well, this kid, he's going to be the British. This kid, he's going to be the French. The swing set is actually going to be the Ohio Valley. I'll show you where that is in just a second. And who are the kids? The kids are actually Native Americans that had allied with the British and had allied with the French during the 7 Years' War, also sometimes called the French and Indian War. Okay, so let's get into historical stuff. This is what North America looked like in 1754. England has its 13 colonies along the coast. France has colonies up in Canada, in the western part over here. And this disputed area, this is the Ohio Valley. Remember, this is the swing set. Okay, now England wants this disputed territory because they want to expand and move westward. They got a lot of growing cities and they need more room. France also wants this territory, though. They want it because they want to expand their trading rights and to get more furs and to make more money, right? So this is the Ohio Valley. This is the swing set. So what goes down? Well, in 1754, France, remember he's going to be this kid here, they're going to start to build forts in the Ohio Valley and claim it for their own. So this is this kid claiming the swing set for himself. This makes the English angry. So what do the English do? They send this guy, a 22-year-old surveyor named George Washington, into the Ohio Valley, and they say, hey, we want the Ohio Valley. Get off the swing set. This is ours. But the French are basically like, no way. George Washington leads a group of men. There's a couple of different skirmishes. And in the Ohio Valley, shots are fired between the French and the English, and it ignites a war that will actually take place all over the world. So how does the war start? Well, in 1754, England sends one of their generals, Edward Braddock, to take back Fort Duquesne, this French established fort in the Ohio Valley. Edward Braddock takes 2,000 men. He's very confident. He thinks he can win the swing set back, right, for the British, but he is sorely mistaken. His expedition is actually a complete disaster. Almost half of his men are killed, including the general himself. Afterwards, French armed Native Americans started to attack Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. This disabled these three colonies from helping in the war effort. France is the big winner. In the first couple years of the 7 Years' War, 1754 and 1755, things are not looking good for the English. One, they can't control the swing set, the Ohio Valley, but two, their home colonies are also under threat from the French. But things start to turn around for the English, thanks in large part to William Pitt, an influential British member of Parliament. He's going to do two things. One, he's going to spend a lot of money on the conflict, and two, he's going to ally with Iroquois Native Americans. He's going to recruit men to help fight back and take the Ohio Valley. And he's very successful. Fort Duquesne, which was once a French fort, turns over to the British. And also, he mobilizes nearly 40,000 colonial soldiers. from states like Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, and they fight against the British and the Native Americans, and they're able to take back the territory that was disputed. The final engagement, or really the decisive engagement, being the Battle of Quebec in 1760. An English army defeats a French army, and basically the war is won for the British soldiers. The war lasts until about 1763, but most of the fighting is small by that point. So the British are the huge winners from the 7 Years' War. So the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1763. I know there's like a million different Treaty of Parises, but this slide is going to show what Britain won. 3 parts. First, France, because they lost the 7 Years' War, had to relinquish all territorial claims east of the Mississippi River. Britain basically got all of that. That's a lot. Spain, who had allied with the French, had to cede Florida to the British as well. And also, the Louisiana Territory, which was formally claimed by France, was turned over to Spain. England didn't want France to have it. France didn't want England to have it, so the Spanish are going to control this territory. So the French are almost wiped out completely of North America, except for a few islands in the West Indies and parts of New Orleans. The Acadians moved down and became the Cajuns, so France has a little bit of influence left down here. So this is what Britain won from the Treaty of Paris. What did Britain lose, though? Well, first, in 1763, there was an Ottawa chief named Pontiac who was fighting alongside the French. And when he finds out the French are gone, he's not cool with that. He's going to kind of continue the fighting because he doesn't want to be ruled by the British. So he attacks several forts. Ultimately, he's not able to be successful, though. Pontiac's rebellion, as it's called, loses. But the colonists don't like that because they're like, why is there still fighting? We thought the 7 Years' War was over. Britain then issued the Proclamation of 1763, this arbitrary line that kind of said, okay, in order to stop future Pontiacs from attacking, we will say, all right, colonists, you can't cross this line. You can't go into this new territory. But the colonists are like, we just fought a war so we could go over this territory. So why are you saying we can't cross this line? This makes the colonists upset. All of them disregard the line anyway, and they start to go past and expand westward. Also, 10,000 British soldiers were left to defend the Great Lakes region to stop future Pontiac, to stop future rebellions. And the colonists thought that was unfair also. They didn't like a standing army so close to their borders. But the biggest impact of the Treaty of Paris, Britain did win a lot of territory, but they were in major debt following the 7 Years' War. To put it into some numbers, British debt before the 7 Years' War was £72 million. Afterwards, it was £132 million. So Britain needs to pay back their debts. In later videos, we'll talk about how would they pay back that debt. Well, they'd start to tax the colonies. Also, 3 quick other facts about the 7 Years' War. Sometimes it's called the French and Indian War, but we think that name is misleading because the French had Native American allies and the English had Native American allies. You're probably thinking, isn't this war 9 years? Well, England doesn't actually declare war until 1756. That's why it gets the term. And also, the 7 Years' War was the world's first global war. Right? It was a conflict between France and England that was fought all over the world. This video didn't have time to look into it, but there's also battles in South America, Europe, Africa, India, and the Philippines. The long story short, Britain basically won everywhere.